Of Thieves and Shadows by B.S.H Garcia is one of the most incredible indie debuts I've had the pleasure of reading. This multi-POV, multi-species story was the definition of epic fantasy. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris and today's video is the Of Thieves and Shadows by B.S.H Garcia book review. This is the Heart of Quinaria, book number 1. I think that's how you pronounce it. I could be very wrong. Quinaria is on the brink of war. The precious resource of Nevathim fuels the greed of the powerful. 3 nations have held relative peace for centuries, but the same 3 nations have held quiet resentments towards one another all of this time. When horrific, ancient, and hidden histories of the world threaten all those who dwell in it, peace will no longer be an option. It is now up to Alacia, a woman who has never wanted the power to lead, to find out what the hidden histories of the scrolls hide. Along the way, she will uncover more truth than she bargained for. But Alacia cannot do this alone. She entrusts an unlikely crew to help her uncover the truth. The group traverse across the lands to discover the secrets held all over the world. We have Xavier and Jackie, who are after Alacia's heart, forced to hide their feelings while doing the bidding of their leader. Lumira, a snarky cat-like Beridian with words as sharp as her claws. Davia, soldier of the Azar, turned rogue to help their cause against a war that is on their doorstep. And finally, Konar, an advisor to Alacia who holds a terrible secret, one he doesn't want uncovered, and one that could unleash the ancient evil they are all so worried about. Alacia and her allies could be all that stand between war and a dying world. That is, if their conflicting ambitions don't destroy them first. That is the plot in a nutshell. The author has done a really good job of bringing in this multi-POV and coupling that with pacing to make this book feel like a character-driven book, but also having a lot else going on for it. I am shocked that this is a debut. To be completely honest with you, this book feels like a seasoned author is writing their 2nd or 3rd series. This book had so much to unpack in 550 pages, and we could be here for a very long time if I went into everything that I loved about this. But just know that if you're looking for an indie book which hits all of the marks, then this is going to be one you want to pick up. First and foremost, the world building here was some of the best I've read in a debut indie novel, and you know me, I am a world building driven guy. I absolutely love that element in any fantasy story, and it was done spectacularly here in Of Thieves and Shadows. Then we had the sheer scope of the characters and how they all differentiate, but also somehow work with one another. And finally, what I will talk about today is the political intrigue and the machinations that fuel the plot. So from that, there are a lot of big elements that worked to bring this book together, and it was such a joy to read. The first thing I'll talk about is the world building. So not only is the map friggin' huge, but we get to experience quite a lot of it during our travels within the story. Once the characters have been established at the beginning of the book, we have multi-POVs experiencing different parts of the world as they traverse across it. They each undertake various tasks in various spaces within this world, and those lands get to open up for us as we go along. But not only is the physical world impressive, we are dealing with a multi-species book as well. So the number of species, creatures, including the terrifying bug monsters called Deathstalkers, make this world burst to life on the page. Everywhere you turn, there is something else to learn and something else to see, regardless of what place in the world you are currently in. Very early on, for example, we are introduced to a Beridian. These are feline-esque creatures fitted out with stealth abilities and claws to boot. They are fierce, unforgiving, and powerful. From there, different species that play an active role within the world continue to grow around the main POVs that we're following, and Lumira, who is our main Viridian, also gets a POV of her own. The author has taken inspiration from the real world that we live in, which has made this book feel real. It drew me into the story for having the ability to connect things to our actual world, which was amazing. As a visual reader, it really drew me in and gave me those strong visuals, but for someone who isn't a visual reader, it would help them to connect to the story on a deeper level, which I thought was absolutely amazing to be able to pull that off in a debut. An example of using real world scenarios inside of a fantasy story, I'm going to take our queer character Jackie. So at one point in the story, they go into an area where she's told she needs to be careful and not reveal her sexuality because it is not legal within a certain city that they were traveling through at the time. Her entourage around her were quite encouraging, saying that they themselves did not believe in those laws, but they did beg her to be careful because it could be quite dangerous for her in that situation. This is something that people are still dealing with in the real world today, and gave that a very real feel to the book. From the scope of the world, we move on to the scope of our characters. We follow several POVs in this book, each with their own personality and motivations to move Alicia's plot forward. I love that each character came from a different background. Even if they'd lived together for some time, they had, like I said, those different motivations and that different background, which did make them seem unique in their own way. Our initial trio of young people lived amongst the nobility, two of which had feelings for our main protagonist. What impressed me about this is the feelings did not feel forced, or they were not forced on the reader either. As we were going through the story, it was said in passing comments, and it felt like these feelings had been bubbling under the surface for a very long time and just not been acknowledged. But it wasn't forced down the reader's throat as this is now a love triangle that we're going into. It absolutely wasn't. It was just, these are feelings. They've had this for a long time. It is now part of their personality, and we're going to explore that in subtle ways throughout the story. By writing them in this way, it felt authentic to those characters and the interactions that they did have with Alicia as we went through the book. We then moved on to Davia, who was hired by the Azar to find out if Alicia's people were hoarding the resource that they needed for advancement, the Nevathim, that we mentioned right at the beginning of the review. His conflicting motivations towards his people and his family, and his budding feelings for the crew that he was now a part of, also never felt forced, which was great to experience and feel like you were experiencing those feelings with him. Throw in the hot-headed Viridians, the monsters along the way, and a rich history surrounding the Stormbirds that are introduced in the beginning of the book, and you have yourself a hell of a cast that you are now following. It was really fun to see these obviously clashing personalities having to figure one another out and work together to sort out their grievances and progress the plot. What I will say that the author has done very well in terms of the characters and character building and world building through the characters is the pacing. What she has done is the first half of the book had longer chapters. So the longer chapters allowed us to get into the plot, into the story, into the characters' heads as we started to follow each of these POVs. Once we had that established, the chapters became shorter and sharper once we knew how the characters, or we could gauge how the characters were going to react to certain things, and it became a much faster pace in the second half of the book. So we got to establish it without being boring, and then we also got to get that heart rate pumping, those storyline, those plot points coming together in a much faster way, which meant for a really entertaining read and way to understand our characters and then also know where their motivations may take them in the future. Now, we could be here forever talking about this book, so I will mention one last thing as a positive here, and that is the political intrigue that has been built up throughout the story. Almost immediately, we as the reader are thrown into a world which feels like it's on the precipice of destruction. We have a new young leader who is highly dependent on her advisor as she's introduced, and it's obvious she does not want leadership and doesn't know how to control the world around her. Not only this, but she is a half-breed, one illegal to other powerful nations within the world, mainly Azar. The leaders of Azar have caught wind that their precious resource may be being hoarded by the nation that Alicia is at the head of. They are ready to bring down the peace if they can get their hands on it once more. Underlying this is the threat of an ancient evil which could lead to the undoing of everyone and everything, regardless of the petty politics that are going between the two nations at the time. This underlying evil threat has its heart right under their noses. It is contributing to the decisions made amongst nobility every single day. This book had so much going on, and please pick it up and read it and talk to me about it, because I need more people talking about this book and this series. I feel like we've only cracked the surface of what's happening in Quinaria, and I can't wait for it to explode. An awesome debut from a new voice in dark fantasy, epic fantasy. I had such a good time. What do you think of this one? Are you going to pick this one up? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like the content, give it one of those. If you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will. I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao.